Recording. Welcome everybody, Bruchim Aba'im, to the Shiur. We're starting a little bit late due to technical difficulties. That's a famous word for someone doesn't know how to work my computer. I don't know who that is, but that's where we are. If there's anybody who'd like to dedicate the Shiur today, let me know. You can unmute yourself if you're interested in dedicating the Shiur. As of now, it's open for dedication. We are about to begin Parshas MIKAITZ. Before we even begin Parshas MIKAITZ, I would like to point out that the Parsha itself is usually read on Hanukkah. Vayeshev and MIKAITZ are the two Parshios that have an opportunity to be read on Hanukkah. Vayeshev is not as common, which was last week's Sedra, but it also, as we pointed out, has a deep connection to Hanukkah. MIKAITZ is more likely to be read on Hanukkah. This year is an unusual year. There are many things about this year that are unusual, including the fact that next week, on Friday, will be Asara B'Teves, which is an unusual occurrence. And there are many other unusual occurrences this year due to the uniqueness of the calendar, including when Pesach begins, and so many other things also. MIKAITZ usually has its reading on Hanukkah. Now, I'm going to go down a bit, and we're going to go to Perek Mem Gimel Pasuk Lamed Daled. We're going to go to Perek Mem Gimel Pasuk Lamed Daled, which is right here. And I'm going to show you a pasuk which gives us this connection to Hanukkah. But the connection is not subtle. Yet, underneath the connection lies some very great ideas which many in the Jewish world are not familiar with. So we're going to take a look at this particular pasuk. The pasuk says that when Yosef meets his brothers, and we know that in this week's Sedra there are a couple of incidents taking place when he meets his brothers after he becomes the viceroy of Egypt, which we'll get to later. He meets his brothers and he sends them packing with their money and with their food that they need to go home with. And he tells them that they have to bring their younger brother down because he takes Shimon and locks him in a prison. And he's not letting him go until you bring down the other brother that you promised. And they go get Binyamin, they bring him down. And when they come to Yosef, the pasuk says an interesting thing. Vayeshvu lefanav. Yosef sits the brothers in front of him. Now, they don't know that this is Yosef. Previously, the pasuk had told us, Vayaker Yosef es echad, that Yaakov recognized his brother, that Vayaker Yosef es echad, that Yosef recognized his brothers, Vehem lo hikiruhu, but they did not recognize him. Rashi goes on to quote the Medrash that when he left, he had no beard. Now he had a beard. They couldn't recognize him, and so on and so forth. Yosef knows who his brothers are, and he plays the magic cup game. As the Medrash says, he takes the silver goblet that he's got, he makes a sound with it. By hitting it, it makes a sound, and when it makes the sound, he says, "Oh, Reuven, you're the oldest. Where are you?" And he says, "You sit next to me because you're the oldest." Then he gives a clap again to the cup. And he says, "Shimon, you're the next oldest. You sit next to him." And according to the Medrash, he goes through all the brothers that way. And they're looking at each other. This Egyptian is a sorcerer who's got magic powers. How does he know this? Something's niggling at them, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And then it says Vayisa masos me'es panav aleihem, and he gives portions to them. Vaterev masas binyamin mimasas kulam, and the portion that was given to Binyamin was greater than their portion, chamesh yodos, 5 hands as much. That's what it literally means. It says chamesh yodos. It could have used a lot of words for 5 times as much, but it uses the word yodos. Why does it use the word yodos? Then it says vayishkaru imo. They drank with him. They enjoyed with him. Okay. Chazal point out that these words chamesh yodos are a hint to Hanukkah. How are the words chamesh yodos a hint to Hanukkah? And tonight, when we lit the last candle of Hanukkah this year, Yetz Hashem, we should be zocheh that next year we should continue again to light those candles. And hopefully that will be lit in the courtyards of our homes, in our Tzenu HaKadosha, not far or within Yerushalayim HaKodesh. But the Yodos is a symbol for Hanukkah. Why is Yodos a symbol for Hanukkah? How does that get to be a symbol for Hanukkah? Reb Naftali Ropshitz, the famous Ropshitzer Rebbe, came up with the following explanation. In the Al HaNisim, Rabbi say, tonight when we daven Ma'ariv, tomorrow morning when we daven Shachris, if you're benched, you said Al HaNisim. It says 5 times the word Yad. Rabim biyad me'atim. The many in the hands of the few. That's the first of the 5 Yodos. Giborim biyad, the first one is Giborim biyad chalashim. The mighty in the hands of the weak. Rabim biyad me'atim. The many in the hands of the few. After the many in the hands of the few, it says, Tamei yim biyad tahorim. Those who were tamei in the hands of those who were tahor. After that, it says, Rishaim biyad tzadikim. The wicked in the hands of the righteous. And finally, Zaydim, biyad oskei sorasecha, those who bemazed on purpose were going against the Torah in the hands of those who were involved in the study of Torah. 5 Yodos, 5 times Yad. Once again, starting with Giborim biyad chaloshim, Rabim biyad ma'atim, Tameyim biyad tahorim, Tzadikim, Zaydim biyad tzadikim, Rishayim biyad tzadikim, and Zaydim biyad oskei sorasecha. Now, when we say these words in the Al HaNisim, so we have a tendency, and especially in the world at large, everybody makes of Hanukkah, this supreme fight for individualized freedom that the Jews wanted to teach the world about the concept of freedom to do whatever they want. And most people, when they hear about Hanukkah lights and freedom, they associate it with democratic freedoms. They associate it with freedom of things which are even prohibited. I have the right to worship however I want. In fact, it's interesting to note that when it comes to Hanukkah, Hanukkah is one of the most widespread observances in the Jewish world. Now, I'm not against that. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that Hanukkah is so well known in the world and that the world can get the message that the few can triumph over the many. The Jewish people have been doing that for all their existence. It's always the few against the many. The Jewish people are the David against the world's Goliath, the David against the Goliath. It's true. This is the nature of the Jewish people. But don't confuse that victory in terms of mere democratic or social freedoms. That's not it at all. Because if you take a look, when we talk about the fact that Hanukkah is one of the most celebrated Yom Tov amongst the Jewish people of all types of Jews, and we're happy about that, the fact remains that the basic concept of the freedom of the Jewish people is the freedom to keep the Torah, not anything else. Not the freedom to do whatever we want, not the freedom to play fast and loose with the Torah laws and the norms of the Torah society, but rather to stick it to the idea that we stick to the idea of Torah Moshe Misinai, both Torah Shebeksav and Torah Shebal Peh. And it's amazing that so many people are missing that message. Let's go back to those 5 yodos. It starts out by saying, Giborim biyad chalashim, the mighty in the hands of the weak. Okay, this is very nice, and it seems to imply that the weak were able to vanquish the strong. How nice. David once again kills Goliath. And after that, it says, Rabim biyad ma'atim, the many in the hands of the few. So many people, once again, are under the impression that it's talking about the Greek many and the few Jews. Let's go to the next one, where it says, Tameim biyad tahorim. Now, wait a minute. We have to stop for a second. What do you mean by Tameim? Who's Tameh here? Who's Tameh? And who's Tahor? The fact of the matter is, Rabbi Osai, that the word Tameh and Tahor only applies to the Jewish people. No one else. A Jew is possible to become Tameh because a Jew is possible to be Tahor. If one is not possible to be Tahor, you can't become Tameh. So when it says Tameim biyat Tahorim, who were the Tameim? Tameim were Jews. The Tameim were Jews. And they were in the hands of the Tahor Jews. So there was this argument amongst the Jewish people. The Tameim, they said, we should be like everyone else. After all, the year is not 2448. It's 3592. It's over 1,000 years later. You know, 1,000 years, the Torah is very old. You got to keep up with the times. When in Greece, do as the Greeks do. When you're in the Syrian Greek neighborhood, do as the Syrian Greeks do. Be like the Yevonim. Be modern. Get rid of the old stuff. In fact, there were Jews who were backing the Greeks. They were supporting the concept of don't be old-fashioned. Go make yourself a modern man. Be a discus thrower. Go to the gymnasium. Don't emphasize the spirit so much. Emphasize the body, which is what the Greeks did. And so it was Tameim biyad Tahorim. It gets even better because the next one is Risha'im biyad Sadikim, the wicked in the hands of the righteous, and Zaydim, the mazed, purposeful people biyad Oskei Sorasecha. So what do we see? We see that the Yevonim, the Hellenizers, were not just the Greeks. When Matisyahu got up and he said, Mila Hashem Elai, who is for God, follow me, who was he talking to? He was talking to the Jewish people. Do we realize how crucial it is to understand that the miracle of Hanukkah and the vanquishing of the few over the many is the victory of the Torah observant community over those who would take our Torah and trample it to the ground? And that the victory of Hanukkah is symbolic and symptomatic of the ultimate truth of the observance of the commandments and nothing more. It's nice that you light a Hanukkah menorah in the White House. It's very nice that he makes a Hanukkah party and people eat latkes, play dreidel, and eat sufganiyot. But that's not the essence. The essence is these 5 yadayim, the hands of the weak overcoming the hands of the mighty who premised all their power in the sword, while the Jewish people predicate their power as the power of the soul. And this was a victory of the neshama. And that's why MIKAITZ is so crucial in its connection with Hanukkah. Let's go back to the very first pasuk and spend a few moments on MIKAITZ. All right? So the pasuk says, "Vayehi MIKAITZ shnosayim yamim." Now, if you try to translate these words, you're gonna have a tough time. I know. The English translation says it right here. After 2 years' time. Very, very poor translation. That's first of all. But let's take a look at it. Vayehi, and it was MIKAITZ from the end. Shnosayim. Shana is 1 year. Shnosayim is 2 years. Next word, yamim, days. Wait a minute. You just said it was at the end of 2 years. And now you're saying it was at the end of 2 years of days? What's the pshat? If it's 2 years, it's not days. And if it's days, it's not 2 years. Why does this pasuk emphasize it was at the end of 2 years of days? All right, on a simple level, let's answer this question. For the very simple fact that we know that at the end of the last Sedra, it says, the last pasuk says, "V'lo zachar Sarah hamashkim es Yosef." The butler did not remember Yosef, vayishkachehu, and he forgot him. Twice, Yosef asked the Sarah hamashkim to remember him. He told him that I want you to remember me. I want you to remember me when you get called to Paro. I want you to remember me, right? So look what he says over here. Yosef says himself, when he gives the interpretation, he says it twice. Look what he says. Let's go back a few psukim here. He's now translating the dream of the butler. In 3 more days, Paro is going to lift up your head and he's going to pardon you. He's going to return you to your post, and you're going to take the cup of Paro in your hand like it used to be, and you're going to give him to drink. But I'm asking you, says Yosef, Ki im zachartani, I want you to remember me when you are returned to your post. And then he says again, his kartani, and remember me to Paro. Now, according to Chazal, according to the Gemara, and Rashi quotes it, that Yosef made an error over here. Yosef should not have asked the butler to remember him. He should have put his trust totally in Hashem, because things were going his way so famously. He didn't have to do this to ask the butler. Now you could ask a question on that and say, wait a minute. Doesn't it say that a Jew has to do everything he can in his power to help himself? So he was helping himself. What's the problem? The problem is that he asked for it twice. He mentioned it twice in one pasuk. Please remember me. Please don't forget me, mention me. That's overdoing it. You want to say you have to do your istadlus, okay, but don't go nuts over it. You mentioned that it's enough. Sure enough, at the end of the Sedra, the pasuk says, "V'lo zachar Sarah Mashkim es Yosef." Sarah Mashkim didn't remember him. Vayishkachehu, when he forgot him, a double expression. You asked twice, you should know for twice you were forgotten. Now, you know, Yosef is now in prison. I don't know if you're aware of this. The prisons in Egypt were dungeons. It wasn't like today where you get a college degree while you're in prison. They give you a computer, you understand, and you can run for office. It's not the same. And he has to sit 2 more years in a dungeon. Can you imagine that? You know what those 2 years must have felt like? Have you ever been in a class? I'm talking about not now, because I don't want anybody to say, yeah, I've been in your class, Rabbi. It's the same thing. No. Have you ever been in a class in school and the class starts at 9 o'clock and recess is at 11:15? And at 5 after 9, you're saying it's not 11:15 yet. And at 10 after 9, what? I've been here for hours. Oh, I got another 2 hours to go. And it seems like you've been there forever. 5 minutes seems like an hour. Here, Yosef's in prison. He's locked away in a dungeon. Can you imagine what 2 years must have felt like when he's waiting, hopefully, with bated breath at any moment? The Sarah Mashkin's going to remember him, and he doesn't remember him. A day goes by, 2 days, a month, 2 months, 10 months, a year, 2 years. It must have seemed endless. It must have seemed endless. It was like forever. So the pasuk is emphasizing, I want you to know, these were 2 years of days, and every single day felt like a year, because he was put in that position, says Rashi, because he put his trust not in Hashem. This is an unbelievable piece of Musar that we have to think about. Life should not be looked at as if it's taking forever. The Likutim bring down a famous story of Rabbi Chiel Meir, and it says like this. His father told him that he had a dream, and he was in front of Hashem after 120 years. And there were some very, very young-looking people who were up there. And then there were some very, very old-looking people who were up there. And he asked, how come these people look so young and these people look so old? And the answer to him was the following. These old people are really very, very young. But they spent their days as if they were boring. They didn't accomplish anything. They did nothing. Every single year, they did nothing. It was a constant bore, even though it was only days. By them, it stretched out endlessly. It was as if they were in the most boring class in the world, and they couldn't wait to get out, and each day seemed like 10 years. And so, even though these people are very young, they look very old because everything went by them so slowly. They couldn't sit through the life. It was so boring, the B word. And then there were these young-looking people. These people, every day to them, they utilized it as if it was a year. They utilized every year as if it was a day. I couldn't wait to accomplish. I had more to do. I have so much to do. There's not enough hours in the day. There's not enough days in the week. There's not enough weeks in a month. Not enough months in a year. I have so much to do. I can't seem to accomplish it. I need more time. And so they were always eternally young, always striving, always growing, always giving more and more and more. And when a person is growing and developing and using every moment, they're eternally young. You're always young when you think you have so much to accomplish and there's a need to accomplish more. You feel the energy. You feel the desire for accomplishment. Take a look at what we say in Tehillim, Tzadik Aleph, in Pasuk, Yud, Beis. Look what it says. David HaMelech says, Limnos Yomeinu Kein Hoda. Teach us to count each day, because then the Navi Levav Chochma, then we can obtain a wise heart. If we count every single day, we will be able to attain a wise heart because we're utilizing the time on a regular basis. And so when it says, MIKAITZ Nasayim Yomim, it was at the end of 2 years of days, Yosef was waiting anxiously for the end, but he's teaching us, don't waste your years. Instead, count every day and utilize it, because ultimately that's going to bring about the Geula. And sure enough, when it came to Paro dreaming, and the dream meant something, it's fascinating that this dream ultimately led to the freedom of the Jewish people. Because he dreamt and didn't have an interpretation that he was satisfied with. And Yosef was called to, and he does, in the way that made sense to Paro. And since it made sense to Paro, he therefore appointed Yosef as a leader. And we're going to go to that now. We're going to take a look at some of the statements that happened when Yosef was appointed as a leader. Let's go ahead to Perek Mem Aleph, Pasuk Lamed Tes. We are now in Mem Aleph. We're going to go all the way up to Lamed Tes, and here it is. Lamed Tes. Okay. So, Vayomer Paro Yosef. Paro says to Yosef. Yosef just interpreted the dream to Paro, and they made sense to him. Rashi brings down, there were interpretations by the soothsayers. Oh, the 7 fat cows and the 7 skinny cows, you're going to have healthy daughters. They're going to marry guys and they're all going to die. Then you're going to have new ones. Get out of here. But when a Pharaoh dreams, he doesn't dream about his own personal self. He dreams about the entire world, So Yosef gives Paro an interpretation. Not only does he give him interpretation, but he tells him the following. He says, V'atah, and now Paro better find a guy who's understanding and as wise and appoint him over the land of Egypt. Paro should appoint overseers, get the land to supply and store up all of its food so that when the famine comes, they'll have what to eat. And this was good in the eyes of Paro. And now Paro says to his servants, Animtza kozeh ish asher ruach elokim bo? Is there any person alive that you can point to that has the spirit of God in him? Paro is amazing. He doesn't believe in God. Paro constantly says, I don't believe in God. But here he sees something unique, and he says, this guy's got divine wisdom. So Paro says to Yosef, after Hashem has shown you all this, there's obviously no one who's more wise than you. Now, there's a famous story when it comes to after Hashem has shown you all this, which was told over in the time of the Noda Yehuda, the Yechezkel Landau, who was so brilliant in his tshuvas. There were 2 Jews, it sounds a little humorous perhaps, but there were 2 Jews who were extremely wealthy, okay? They were extremely wealthy people. And they had mansions next to each other. And a minstrel, a musician, came along, set up outside the 2 houses, and started playing his violin. And he played beautiful, beautiful music. And the 2 extremely wealthy millionaires came out of their houses and were listening to the beautiful, beautiful music. Reuven and Shimon, we'll call them. And Reuven says to Shimon, Shimon, look at this. Isn't this beautiful music? I'm so impressed that he came to play for me. He came to play for me. This is wonderful. And Shimon says, are you kidding? You think that he came to play for you? He didn't come to play for you. He came to play for me. I'm the one that he came to play for. This music was for me. You just happen to live next door to me, so you're hearing it. But really, this music was for me. And Reuven says, it's for me. And Shimon says, no, it's for me. And they start quarreling in a good-natured way because they know it's a joke. But they decided, you know what? Let's go to the Rav. Everything, is blame. You blame everything on the rabbi, right? So let's go to the rabbi. We're going to ask him who he thinks this fellow was playing for. The other one says, okay, let me go get some money because, when you go to the Rav to ask him a question, it's nice to give him a pidyon. It's nice to give him something, as a donation. So we'll each share the donation. They each go home, they get some money, they come to the Rav. They ask him, we'd like you to settle a dispute. Here's the pidyon that we're giving you. And they tell him the story. And Reuven says, tell me, Rabbi, isn't it true that he came to play for me? And Shimon says, tell him the truth, Rabbi. Isn't it that he came to play for me? And the Nod of Yehuda says, Rabosai, I want you to know something. He didn't come to play for either one of you. He came to play for me. You put down the pidyon over here. You gave me the money for this din Torah. It's obvious that you both don't know what you're talking about. He came to play for me. You hear? Paro says to Yosef, Acharei hodia Elokim eskozos. Since Hashem has shown you this brilliant solution, it's obvious, ein novon v'chacham kamocha. There is no one who is as understanding or wise as you, and therefore, ator tihiya al beisi. You are going to be appointed the second in command. They took him out of the prison, out of the dungeon, and appointed him to be the viceroy of Egypt. Paro was saying, this dream was not for me. This dream was not for Egypt. This dream was for you, so that you could explain this dream, and you could tell this dream to me, and you could help me understand. And it's obvious that all of this was really only for your benefit. And Chazal go a step further, and they say, this was actually for all of Klal Yisrael's benefit. It's true, all the world benefited, all of Egypt benefited, all the world benefited. And that's the job of the Jew, to see to it that the whole world benefits. If we light Hanukkah candles in public, it's there to help the whole world benefit. The concept that religious freedom, according to the dictates of the soul of the Jewish people, is what keeps the Jewish people alive. And their assimilation into the melting pot of whatever country they're in. And by their lacking in the performance of the excellence of the mitzvahs, they lose their identity. And if they lose their identity, then the world loses its identity, because there is no such thing as true freedom. Because as soon as the Jewish people are oppressed and are taken away from their unique individuality, it's a statement that there is no individuality in the world. And so the world runs into chaos. What do you think the communists try to do? They try to make everybody equal to nothing. There was no individuality. What do the Nazis try to do? Yamach Shemon. Everyone must be like us. Here you have both the right and the left, both the communistic ideal and the extreme socialist ideal. And you have the right-wing Nazi Yamach Shemon ideal. And all of them put together do nothing but destroy the world. They bring about nothing but death and destruction, because neither of them have got it right. The true rights are when the individual Jewish people are able to teach the world that there is a God in this world, and that there is responsibility in this world, and that the world is not hefker. You can't just do whatever you want. Even the Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. You know, this concept of having a group of people that observe the Noahide laws, all Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, is of a crucial nature for the Jewish people, because it helps identify that there are rights and there are wrongs, not just individual rights, individual responsibilities. The difference between those who want rights for even the lowest members of society, demanding prisoners' rights, which it's true, you shouldn't mistreat them, but at the same time, to make it that the dog has the same rights as a human being, as so many atheists claim, there's no difference between them. There is no difference. Animal rights activists. Animals have the same right to live as you do. So they can be against circumcision. They can be against kosher slaughter. They can infringe on the rights of every single Jew because of a skewed sense of what rights and obligations are. And along comes Paro and he says, since this was shown to you and the Jewish people have a unique finger on the pulse of Hashem's will, it's obvious it's for your benefit. It's for the Jewish people's benefit. And sure enough, Yosef was sent there for the Jewish people's benefit, not only for his own, and not only for the sake of the rest of his family. So here we have some interesting insights into the Sedra. I'm going to leave you with a question, and I'm going to ask this question tomorrow night in the shul again. Here's a question. When Yosef demanded that the brothers bring down their brother Binyamin, as far as the brothers were concerned, Yosef did not know who they were. Why couldn't they bring down not Binyamin? Because Yaakov didn't want to send Binyamin. Yaakov was afraid if Binyamin, anything happens to, not knowing that Yosef was alive, Yaakov would say, I've lost both my children from my wife, Rachel, and that he didn't want in the worst way. And so he had to be convinced by first Reuven's failed attempt, and then ultimately Yehuda's acceptable logic to take down Binyamin. Why couldn't Yaakov say, you know, we have over here Muhammad, who is our servant. We'll send Muhammad down and we'll say that he's Binyamin. This guy doesn't know anyway. Send down Muhammad. Let him be in Binyamin's place. The other guy doesn't know. Now, it's true, it's not nice to lie, but you're worried about Binyamin's life. Why don't you take a chance? Send Muhammad down. If the guy is honest and it'll say this is him, so that's the end of the story. What's this business with sending down Binyamin? Why couldn't he substitute somebody for Binyamin and tell him that this is Binyamin? It's an interesting question. You have an opportunity to think about it over Shabbos. Go right ahead. Okay, Rabosai. Now, what we're going to do is unmute all. Are there any questions? Any questions? No? Okay. Rabosai, Mietz Hashem, next week, Thursday night, once again, we'll meet on Parsha's Vayigash. We'll have an opportunity to go even further into the story that we just are dealing with, which is so crucial because it tells us about the great midos of the Jewish people. All right, have a wonderful Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All the best. We wish you my pleasure. My pleasure. We wish you all the best. Okay.
And she should have a refuah shalema.
Everybody.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Everybody should have a refuah shalema.
Amen.
Amen.
All Klal Yisrael.
All Klal Yisrael. So Sha'ar Chole Yisrael. We pray for everybody that should be gesund.
The corona should get the corona should have a refuah shalema. Then everybody will have the refuah shalema.
Have a wonderful Shabbos. So,
Okay.
Thank you,
Shabbos.
Rabbi.
Amun Daf.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you.